All right, welcome back. Something very important happened this week. The Trinidad and Tobago Publishers and Broadcasters Association, along with the Media Association and other stakeholders, met with the government's legislative committee to discuss the Cybercrime Bill. And here's in a nutshell why.
Clauses 9 and 13 of the bill strike directly at the day-to-day professional activities of journalists and other civil society interests. Matt says the bill threatens to stifle and criminalize journalists and members of the public who receive, gain access to, or share computer data from another person, knowing that the other person has obtained the computer data through unauthorized means.
After that meeting, the government decided that the debate would continue, but they're not going to take a look at it. They're not going to vote on it, sorry. But tonight, we're going to talk to an ICT specialist and writer, journalist, Shiva Bissessar, who says there's a lot more at stake with this bill than just press freedom. So, good evening, Shiva. So, talk to me. So, what is it that we're missing? Because you're saying that the media probably is a little biased in what they're worried about in this bill, but there's something there's more.
Well, I mean, start with a lot of countries right now within the Caribbean are going through this process of, developing cybercrime legislation. It started with a ITU project, a HIPCA project, to develop standardized cybercrime legislation. So Trinidad is just one within many Caribbean nations going through this right now. So
we're all essentially trying to do a copy-paste, but fix it to suit our own individual needs.
Right. So there are two standards that were developed. There was the HIPCA standard and there's the eGRIP standard. However, there has been issues with both of these standards, especially when you try to compare it against international standards. So the Budapest Convention, which is the only effective global treaty on cybercrime. What countries try to do is they try to align themselves with this convention or try to become a signatory to this convention. So if your laws are not in accordance or in alignment with that convention, you can have potential problems when you get to the point of, seeking assistance from other signatories to that convention. So it's not necessarily that the laws that we have are bad right now, but there are some issues. So there was a December 2014 paper by the Council of Europe which cited certain issues with the HIPCA model law exercise. Now, Trinidad and Tobago did not adopt the HIPCA model law as it came down. They did modify it into what is currently our cybercrime legislation, or cybercrime bill. But there are some issues that was outlined within that paper that I have seen within the current format of the cybercrime bill.
So is sorry, go ahead.
No, the 2014 as well as the 2015 bill. Other than that, the media should be commended for seeking their interest with respect to those particular clauses 9 and 13, which I see both sides. So I see the need for people to protect their data, for corporations to protect their data, and I also see the need where people would have an exercise to, for instance, like whistleblowing, where you need to get a journalist involved and share that data with them.
Right, exactly. But I think that's where the problem comes in. The word unauthorized. What does that mean, and how do you define it? And it's such a slippery slope that anything could.
Well, to start, I'm not a lawyer, IT professional. So let's make that clear. But I mean, unauthorized data access. So you can have access to data. But within an organization, you may have privileges to access that data, but there are other data that you don't have access to. But you can still access. Now, having access to something and having authorization to have it is two different things. So in the instance where someone shares with the media certain files which they didn't necessarily have authorization to have, but they thought that, in the public interest, we need to share this with the media. That's where these clauses could potentially come into effect.
So let's talk about the Grenada model. The Grenada model had a major problem because what it had said was that its Facebook posts and defamatory Facebook posts could also be against the law. So is that something that's also in this bill that we should be looking out for?
So I think the Grenada model would have been modeled after the eGRIP model law.
Right.
Now, the eGRIP model law had more problems than the HIPCA model law. Thankfully, we haven't adopted fully the HIPCA model. We have derived from the HIPCA model. but there are still some issues within it. So I would recommend that the authorities take a look at that Council of Europe December 2014 paper to see some of the issues that are outlined with respect to the HIPCA model law.
Now, as we're talking about Facebook and stuff like that, this bill is also supposed to target cyberbullying. How is it going to do that, and how do you monitor or define cyberbullying?
Well, cyberbullying could be, I think how it is defined within the bill is defined as repeated annoyance. Well, I don't want to use the word annoyances because that causes some uproar.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But repeated offending messages towards another party could be an instance of cyberbullying. But I mean, so for instance, an initial tweet from me, just one single tweet from me, could potentially lead to a multitude of tweets, which is not necessarily that I am repeating that same action, but it is propagating in social media. So have I necessarily performed an offense under the Cybercrime Bill? That is one of the questions I've asked.
So how does this work? How does this work with, let's say, now we have all these political bloggers, so to speak, that come out and attack journalists? Would that be considered cyberbullying as well, or is there a special?
I suppose it depends on the interpretation of the law. It depends on how the people, the law enforcement agencies would have to interpret a particular case in accordance with the law and determine whether or not an offense has taken place.
Now, you've called for more consultation. Who else should the government be speaking to? Right.
So when this bill comes into play, there's an aspect within this bill called due diligence. So, for instance, it's a corporate body could be charged with an offense under the Cybercrime Bill if they don't practice due diligence towards preventing attacks on other operations on the internet, or even critical infrastructure on the internet. The critical infrastructure will carry a higher penalty. So that is where, it now mandates that organizations take information security more seriously. It now mandates that they develop an information security governance structure and awareness campaigns within their organization. So, for instance, the same social media example, if an offending message comes from the corporate Twitter account, the corporation could potentially be charged with an offense under the Cybercrime Bill.
Now, of course, this show is all about the media, and you're a writer, and you write about these things. Is it that there isn't enough knowledge about tech, or for tech journalists to come out and to write about these issues?
Well, tech journalism in Trinidad locally is not really seen as...
Well, we don't really have an Apple. We wouldn't have like an Apple event to cover that sort of thing, right?
Yeah. It's not really seen as I would say, as a sexy issue, as like a business Guardian feature or something. Hey, I think there's space for it. I think, probably the Express or the Guardian could dedicate some more space towards technology writing to increase, stakeholder interest within this, because if this piece of legislation comes into play, it now brings into organizations a more serious nature needs to be developed around information security and technology management.
All right. So I'll let you wrap up and give your final thoughts on this bill. So do you think it should be going through in this this parliamentary session, or I guess we'll have to wait till the next one?
Yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction, right? We need legislation like this. I think what I would like to see more of, I would like to see more stakeholder engagement. I would like to see more active participation from user groups who are dedicated within ICT. For instance, ISPs, corporations, they need to understand how this bill is going to impact them. And they need to understand it and put forward their views to the authorities, and let's come to a consensus on this thing. All right.
Shiva Bissessar, thank you very much for your time and your insight. We look forward. The website is Tech News TNT.
Tech News TT is where most of my articles are, but you can go to pinaka.co.tt for my website.
All right, check it out. All right. So